my role in my capacity as a mobilizer and staff at Sydney Hosanna is my main role is to raise up and to help and to inspire young people to grow in their faith, to strengthen their walk of faith, and to participate in the mission of God. Now, what I find more and more is that for various reasons, in our modern society, because of the technology, because of social media, because of, I don't know, in Adelaide, it was quite quiet, I recall. But when I came to Sydney, man, everyone is so busy. I don't think you guys realize how busy you live life in Sydney. But in Adelaide, if someone said, hey, you want to catch up tonight for dinner, come to my place? Yeah, sure, and we could just go. Like, there was no issues. But here, you have to book people in like 3-6 months in advance. And so even with this conference, next year, we're going to start a lot earlier. We're going to be approaching organizations and churches and just everyone to really try and get like triple, quadruple the people that we have today. But no, thank you for coming. But the point, though, I was saying was that we're so busy. We're so busy. And, I think just the demands that people have in Sydney, it makes it very hard for people here to improve their lives, or to go to the gym, or to do that course that they want to do, learn guitar or whatever it might be, or to increase your faith, to grow in your faith. Oh yeah, to get to evangelism one day. It's all things that are sort of on the wish list, but they're very hard to get into our lives. Would you agree with me on that one? Is that a fair call? And let's be honest, as churchgoers, as Christians, our task, the imperative that we've been given, really is, as we heard with Ed and also with Kevin, is to make disciples of all nations. So there's an imperative there. That's a command, actually, to make disciples of all nations. But it's hard to do that. I want to ask a question, just yourselves. How, like in the past, say, 5 years, or the past 10 years for the older ones here, for the past 20 years, or for however long you've been a Christian, let me just ask the question. You don't have to put your hand up. This is not a shame, name and shame session, but just in your own heart, put up your hand if you've discipled 1, 2, 3 people in your life. So the question can be asked another way. How many people in your life have you actually, in your Christian life, have you discipled? And that's the imperative that we've been given in Matthew 28, is to disciple all nations. Well, if no one's doing the discipling, how are we going to disciple all nations, right? And I think even for pastors, I know there's a few pastors here, it's even harder, isn't it? Because there's so much going on. Like, it's just so hard. You want to spend that time with people and disciple them, and it just time always gets in the way. So with this sort of dilemma in mind, I want to actually deal with the problem of how can we effectively disciple people? And by looking at that question, we're going to actually look at how missions actually strengthens the church. They seem unrelated, but by the end of my talk, you'll see that they are related, okay? And so if we just have a quick look, when you go to there's professionals here. Is anyone like an accountant or a lawyer or a dentist or a doctor, or you said you were in the Navy? What was your role? Nuclear power, okay. So do you for any professionals anyway, I know there's a lot of professionals. Are you supposed to upgrade your skills and your professional knowledge and expertise all the time? As teachers as well, of course. How easy is it to do that? To find the time to squeeze in that little whatever it is, right? It's actually quite hard. And in the same way, for us in our faith, it is actually quite hard to grow in your faith, to become more passionate about missions, to obey the commandments, the first and second commandment and the Great Commission. It's actually really hard to do that. It's almost like an extracurricular. But we have to do it. And so as professionals, how do you do it? How do you do it? You go to conferences, right? Little 3 days, 4 days conferences, or you do an intensive at SMBC. I'm plugging SMBC because I learned a lot from it, so I'm trying to give back. And SMBC has intensives, so I've done a couple of those. And they're excellent ways to increase your knowledge and to upgrade your skill and your ability to do what you need to do. And so in modern life, it's so busy, I think intensives are the way to go. Would you agree with me on that? That's why SMB does that. That's why you've got those courses. That's why people go to conferences, because you cannot do a consistent sort of like 3 years sometimes. Sometimes you just got to do it in a short course. Now, if in our professional life that's the way we do it, and for those of you who do sports or go to the gym or whatever, you know that there's those sort of boot camps where you really get into it to kickstart you, right? So if we do that in our secular life, how much more should we consider that kind of thing in the spiritual life? Have you ever considered doing intensives in your spiritual life? And did you know that you can do discipleship even through an intensive method? So what am I talking about here? So, Pastor Dan, what are you talking about intensives in your spiritual life? Well, let's have a look at what Jesus did. He had limited time, did he not? He had 3 years, all right? He had 3 years to start the church of billions of people now all over the world. He only had 3 years to do that. His ministry was 3 years, and in those days, people had a lot of time, like more so than probably we do now, okay? Because a lot of people didn't have jobs, etc. But Jesus, he did not have time. We know that because if you read the Gospels, you will see that everyone was always after him. He had to go away by himself early in the morning in order to pray, right? To spend time with God in that way. And so, okay, did Jesus ever use intensives? Think about it. Can someone tell me an example where Jesus actually used intensives to disciple his people? This is an interactive question. It's not rhetorical. So, any ideas? Yeah. The Sermon on the Mount. Intensive teaching, yes, but close. Do you recall Jesus sending people out on short-term mission trips? Yeah, right? We don't think of it that way, but did Jesus send people out on short-term missions? Well, yes, he did. Let me read it for you. In Luke chapter 9, we have, when Jesus had called the 12 together, he gave them power and authority to drive out all demons and to cure diseases, and he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. He told them, take nothing for your journey. I won't read through the rest of that, but then, they go out, and the disciples came back saying, the demons obey us when we cast them out. Like, they were amazed. In other words, we know it wasn't like, this is what you got to do for the rest of, from now on. It was an intensive. It was a short period of time where you could sort of exclude everything else that you're doing in your life, all the different responsibilities, all of your maybe family commitments. It's a short period of time where you can actually get together with a few people with like-minded mission to achieve this intensive course. And what Jesus had for them at this time was to go and preach the gospel, heal the sick, and cast out demons. In other words, the Sermon on the Mount is good because it was the teaching, but it was the short-term mission that allowed the disciples to put it all into practice. And you notice how it's after they came back from that trip that they got excited. There's something about excitement that comes through going on a short-term trip like this. Focused, intentional, and everything else is blocked out and you are just on mission. I mean, isn't that why you go to conferences? Isn't that why you go to do intensives? So you want to block everything out and just focus on that. And there is a certain high to it. There is a certain high to going out and putting your faith into practice and then basically seeing, oh, wow, this actually works. What I learned actually works. Oh, I was afraid of sharing the gospel to people, but when I did it on a short-term mission trip, there was actually people that were listening. You get excited. And I think that's really what this was about, for Jesus to send, okay, you've heard me now, go and try it now. Try it for yourself, okay? Now, this was not a one and done thing. Jesus did it more than once. When did he do it again? Can anyone tell me? He does it in the very next chapter. Okay, so let's have a look at chapter 10. All right, so he did it with the 12 first, but then, all right, because it was so effective, or this I guess is his strategy, but this is only the two that we know of. We know that lots of things happened in Jesus' life and ministry, and not all of it is written down, but these are the two that are mentioned. And so here, let's have a read. Luke chapter 10. After this, yes, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. He told them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Go! I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. Do not take a purse or bag or sandals. Do not greet anyone on the road. And there's more in there. But the point I want to get to is that they went, and what happened when they got back? The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. They were so excited, so surprised that what they had learned Jesus talk about, when they put it into practice, wow, something's happening. Now, if you've ever felt that in your life and your walk of faith, you kind of feel flat. You kind of feel like, oh, I don't feel God's presence, God's power. You might be in a sort of a spiritual rut. My suggestion to you is, if you can, just like a professional needs to go and do those professional courses, just like sometimes you got to just get to a boot camp to get your physical body plan in action, go on a short-term mission trip. Go on a short-term mission trip. Ed did say they have to be done well. I have seen them done not too well, and I have also seen them done well. So please consult with us, consult with someone, consult with people to make sure you do it correctly. Because it is quite a complex thing. A lot of moving parts are happening, but if you do it right, it can be really good. Okay, so there's a couple of things here I just want to point out, and that is, if we go back here, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. He highlights this when he's sending out, meaning, okay, there's not enough people out there to work in the gospel ministry. Let's get a few people together and let's just send them out. Okay, and that's like, they're probably not they're not the super apostles. They're not the super Christians, right? The 12 were kind of the super Christians, right? That's why they are called the apostles. But the 72 were, I don't want to say lesser Christians, but they probably weren't like massive church leaders, all superstar kind of leaders of the church. No, they were just ordinary disciples of Christ, at least as far as we can tell. And so, in that day and age, that's the way they did it. You don't have to do it this way. I've heard people say, "Oh, okay, so make sure you don't take money. Make sure you don't take more than one change of clothes." No, we're living in the modern age, so we've got to do missions contextually. So we've got to do it right for today's age. But the concept, the model of short-term missions is there. And so you notice how when there's this problem of short staff missionaries, not enough missionaries and not enough gospel workers, short-term missions is what Jesus uses in actual fact to do what he needs to do, to fulfill the mandate of the Great Commission. All right. And so what is the Great Commission? Great Commission is Matthew 28. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost." Now, this is the bit that people forget often. "And teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I'm with you always to the end of the age." So there's two things here. Well, the first thing is make disciples of all nations. Go and make disciples of all nations. Okay, number one, I think we agree that we're not really that good at doing that. Okay, I mean, that's a generalized statement, but I think in Sydney, it's not easy to do that, to make disciples of all nations. And there are people that are doing that very well, of course, but just on a general sort of statement there. And the second thing he says is, "and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." So there's two statements, commandments that we need to obey Jesus in terms of the Great Commission. But as you know, we're also asked to love God and love our neighbor. Okay, there's two great commandments and there's the Great Commission. So they're just two basic things in Christianity that we really need to be doing. Okay, so how does then, okay, I've got the title wrong, but it should be how missions strengthens the local church, and I'm going to offer the short-term mission trip as one of many, but one model that I think that we can look at. As I say, don't worry about that top thing there. So, but let's have a look at it. So short-term missions trips. This is the model that we're looking at. How does this strengthen the church if we take the model of short-term missions? So the first thing that we can do is there's the intensive period that is suitable for the modern world. Okay, so that's something that I've just mentioned. In our busy schedules, sometimes rather than it's so hard for Christians to commit. Okay, yeah, the pastor says, hey, let's do one-on-one discipleship. Pastor Jacob, you probably know this firsthand. All right, hey, let's do some one-on-one discipleship. How hard is it to get commitments from people to go, yeah, you know what, I'll commit. And then you go, all right, cool, let's do this weekly, yeah? And it's like, oh, weekly? Could we do that like once a month? Like, it's hard. But you might be able to get them to commit to a short-term mission trip. Okay, so that's the first thing. Suitable, contextual for our modern world. The second thing, though, is the ability to really teach obedience to the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. So those major commandments and imperatives that God wants us to do, the short-term mission trip is a really good way to actually get that happening. Just like Jesus did with the 12 and the 72. Just go out there and do it, okay? And he gave instructions of how to do it, which on a short-term mission trip, there should be relevant training to teach you how to do that, okay? But it's basically a really good way to actually get people in your church to obey the Great Commandments and the Great Commission. Even if it's just a small kind of taster, like a boot camp, so to speak. At least it's going to kickstart something in them. The third thing that the third thing that short-term mission trips can do to strengthen churches is you actually get targeted training. Or you could even cross that over into targeted discipleship for the period of the training and the trip. Okay, so when you want to teach people really in depth, you get to do that during however long your mission prep training is. At Sydney Hosanna, we do like 2 to 3 months, depending. Yeah, and so that's really what we do. And so we do that. And you can really, really do specific training that you really want to do. How hard is it when you say, hey, we're going to do an evangelism training after the service, please come along? It's not many people come along. But if you can get them onto a mission trip, I haven't got the schedule here, but if you want our schedule, I can send it to you. But we basically go through things like, we go through the gospel, we go through missions history, we go through contextualization and cross-cultural understanding, how to understand different cultures. We go through, in the Korean church context, something that's quite important, which is spiritual warfare and the importance of prayer. We go through a whole list of topics that we will cover, which not only will prepare the people on the short-term mission trip to be effective on their short-term mission trip, but also this is stuff that they can use and really be beneficial for their own walk of faith, for their own serving at church or wherever they are, okay? And then the final thing that is beneficial is that you actually raise up passionate people who will serve the church, especially in outreach evangelism, but also in mercy ministries as well. And of course, involvement in global missions. Now, I've been involved in a few different churches. For the pastors here, let me ask you a quick question. Those people that get involved in like outreach, local outreach, those people that get involved in like helping the refugees and that kind of thing, those people that get involved and are serving quite well in the church, elders, you can answer this as well. How many of those people have been on a short-term mission trip? Have at least half of those people who are serving been on a short-term mission trip? Could you just put your hand up if you think that's the case? Okay. So I was working at One Family Church for a while. So Pastor Jacob, thank you for coming today. Appreciate that. But we have a program which is local missions to the Indigenous Australians, so the Aboriginal communities, rural New South Wales. When people went on that trip, okay, some people like just for the interest, some people because their friends are going, some people for whatever reasons. But when they go on that trip, they go through intensive training. Uh, some of them make new friends as well through that, which strengthens the community in your church, okay? But not only that, they actually go out and they practice what they learn. So they're doing evangelism, they're doing gospel talks, they're doing dances, they're doing all sorts of different things. They're helping and loving kids that can be really, really hard to love because they swear at you the first moment you walk through that door, or they come and poke you and try to steal something from you. Like, you learn how to love people on missions. You learn how to do that. You learn how to serve. Okay? And those people that came back, in my experience, when they came back, they were the ones who were helping in local evangelism. They were the ones that were helping in different areas around the church. Now, it might not be a one-to-one correlation, but there's definitely something where people, when they go on short-term missions, they get excited. And you could take that excitement, and this is one thing I would also recommend for short-term mission trips, is make sure you're doing follow-up meetings. Okay, I went on I led a mission trip in January, and we met up for 6 months, almost every fortnight, I think, almost every fortnight for 6 months after, so that we could maintain that passion for missions and continue that relationship. And if you look at it in a church context, that's really going to build your community in the church. You're really doing intentional, I would say even discipleship to a certain extent. Okay, and I just want to end off with so there are 4 things there. Okay, just intensive period suitable for modern world, ability to really teach obedience to the Great Commandment and the commandments and Great Commission, targeted training or discipleship for a period of weeks, months, or even ongoing, and raising up passionate people who will serve the church, especially in outreach, evangelism, mercy ministries, and global missions as well. Now, there's also another case I want to share, and some of the people here are actually from this very church. So we had members, five members from a small church. So you know a lot of small churches around Sydney, okay? Some of those churches are understaffed, so they don't have enough staff to really even have a youth pastor or even have a young adults pastor. And so it's very difficult. And so Selm Church was one of those churches, okay? From what I understand, 6 months ago, or no, about 10 months ago, sorry, it was quite a small group of students in the high school ministry. Would it be like about what, 8 to 10 people coming on a Sunday, right? If that, okay. And from my conversations, again, I think you'll correlate, but also quite the praise was a little bit sort of, it wasn't powerful, wasn't really passionate, and a lot of people weren't really sticking around, okay. So 5 of those people came to the church and to on our mission trip. They received the 8 weeks training. They really built a community that we still catch up even now, every now and then. And but we went to Cambodia, and so I just want to share that a little bit about what happened there. I don't know if you can read all that, but I'll actually. So we served in different churches. We did street evangelism and vacation camps in the slum areas for the very underprivileged. We also even went to a public school and was able to preach the gospel, the explicit gospel, to students of that school. Okay, so we had a partner who was able to organize that for us, and the principal was very happy that we came, even though it's mainly a Buddhist country. So the feedback that we got when we came back, okay, was life-changing and truly unforgettable. My faith has grown so much and made me realize how much I want to be with God. From this trip, I'm able to gain more confidence, which then will help me share the gospel to people back in Sydney. A life-changing experience where you are guaranteed to feel God's love, as well as an experience that changes the perspective you view in life. I want to visit again if possible. I would like to do long-term mission, even just for a few months or at least every so often. I want mission to be part of my life. Now, for pastors and for mission workers, isn't that what we want to hear, right? And it's the short-term mission that was able to do that. The really, really amazing part of this story is that, okay, I didn't realize that the animations weren't going to work, but there's a picture behind that of the students that went on this trip. So it was 5 students from this church. As I said, it was about 8 to 10 people coming on a Sunday. I went to their youth camp about a week ago, and this is them now. This is them now. And I was talking to the youth leader as well as the senior pastor, and one of the things that they said was that after the trip, the students that went on the trip, when they came back, they were so full of passion, so full of God's love, so full that they were overflowing enough that they wanted to serve, and the praise was on fire. They learned how the Cambodians did praise, like it's normally goes for 1 hour. So they learned how to do that, and I don't know if they're going for an hour, but I'm sure it's a bit more sort of passionate. There's a more love for God probably showing there and it being expressed. And then because the passion was there, because the love of God was really evident again, because they had a more missional mindset, and they wanted to serve the church in some way, people stepped up, and now they have a really great band, I hear. A lot of people came back, and it's now grown. I don't know how many people now, like students on a Sunday? 20 odd? Yeah, there was like 23 people at the camp, put it that way. And so what I want to do is encourage pastors and also people in your church, consider short-term missions as a way of strengthening your church, okay? Now, if out of that a missionary comes out, you may feel like, oh, man, we're going to lose someone that's a good member of the church, but that's actually going to be blessing the kingdom of God. Now, we, by the way, don't say, hey, everyone, you need to become a missionary. I don't say that in the training, right? I say, God has something that He wants you to do. There's something that you can do for Him. Some of you will become pastors and missionaries and whatnot, but a lot of you will have to be professionals in the workplace, and you take what you learn and you actually live that out in your life. And so, yeah, so my encouragement really is to consider short-term missions. If you would like advice on that, if you want to know, okay, how can we organize a good trip, please come and talk to us here. I'll be here. If you want to join trips, a lot of the mission organizations here. I've got Sarah here as well, who's a mission agent from an organization, and I think you run trips as well. Or anyway, so there's people that you can talk to if you want to join a mission trip, or you want to organize one within your church. But if you need some advice, please come and talk to us, okay? And we can either help with training or help you formulate the training.